Good morning. It's so good to be with you all as we continue our Mission Moments Sunday School, where we talk to our mission partners at St. Albans and invite them to share about things that they are doing in Waco, the interesting challenges of the past year, and signs of hope for this coming year. So today we are so fortunate to have with us Mission Waco and their executive director, John Calloway. John, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, well, I moved here about 4 years ago. I'm most people have probably heard of Jimmy Doral. I'm the younger, prettier version of Jimmy Doral. And
Jimmy Doral, but better.
But better, yeah. I wasn't going to say it, but since you did. We moved back here, my wife and I, Sarah, who's a pediatric physical therapist, and 2 kiddos, Cohen and Cora, both 7 and 4. Talk about challenges during a pandemic. I think all of us who have been school teachers this last year at home have felt the pressure and the pain and the joy, obviously, I had to bring that up, of teaching your children. But I came back 4 years ago now, 2017, as probably a 4 to 5 year transition to take over what Jimmy and Janet have been doing for almost 40 years now. Mission Waco is 30 years old next year. And so I came on doing development for a year, and now I've stepped into executive director.
That's awesome. As probably most of you know, Mission Waco does a bunch of different things. My Brother's Keeper, Mine Center, Church Under the Bridge. You've probably gone to the cafe. What has it been like being the executive director for Mission Waco in 2020 pandemic COVID time?
Well, how much time do you have? I mean, it's both sort of blessing and curses, right? I mean, I think all of us have lived through a substantial time, and certainly last year came with its own challenges. We had to do a lot of pivoting with over 18 different programs and 6 businesses, all of which presented its own unique challenges. For instance, we still haven't had a theater program. We've got the Jubilee Theater that we hope in the summer we'll be able to have theater camps for children and teenagers, and then kick off our full theater program in the fall. But as we know, I mean, each week we learn more things about COVID-19 and what we can or cannot do. And so back in March, this time, really last year, full year, this whole year has been a wash. I don't even know what's happened. But this time last year, my wife and I were camping, driving back from Austin, and learning that Baylor had shut down, got an email that Waco ISD was not returning from spring break, and we had to meet with all of our staff at Mission Waco to decide, okay, do we keep the restaurant open? What about the grocery store? What about after school programming? What is that going to look like? And so this last year, across each one of our programs, we've really had to just look at the scope of what the ministry is, the essential nature, because we use that word, we threw that term around a lot this past year. For better or for worse, our board and Jimmy and Janet have created a lot of essential services at Mission Waco, and so that means that we've had to keep a lot of things open and just figure out how to be creative in keeping those things open. Like we have a health clinic that is run entirely by volunteers, doctors, nurses. We do have 2 staff, a doctor and a nurse. And we had to figure out how do we keep operating that on Tuesday and Thursday evenings, and what clinics what services can we keep open, which ones do we need to sort of shut down, what are essential of those. And then our after school program is a great example of saying, how do we continue to serve our kids in our neighborhood and be safe with masks, social distancing. And so most of the fall and even still now, we do online learning in the morning, and so we provide iPads, computers, and things like that to our students, and mentoring and sort of just the ability, a safe, warm place for them to come and learn on their computers and do all of their programming for school. And in the afternoon, we continue to do normal after-school programming. It's just we have limited capacity. Instead of 70 children, we may only have 30 or 40. And so, but it's still fun. You know, spring break of last year, we had just finished our American Ninja Warrior themed playground at our children's center, The Rock.
That's awesome.
And it was supposed to have a grand opening but the kids never came back until the fall. And so it's getting the kids outside. A lot of the programming is outside, similar to here at St. Albans being outside with worship services. We're just trying to take each program, each business, and continue to provide those services, but just doing so in a safe way.
So, outdoors have been our friend
Yes.
this past year. I think all of us have learned that. What do you see, challenges do you expect? I mean, 2020 sort of been continuing the pandemic. We're starting to see a slight thaw with people getting vaccinations, case numbers going down.
Right.
What challenges do you see for getting back into the swing of things like things were?
You know, I think it's just listening to the science, listening to our healthcare professionals, public health district, in what capacities are safe. For instance, our homeless shelter, we've been operating and still operating as if the pandemic still exists, because it does. And so everyone is still, staff, participants are required to wear masks. Everybody inside of our buildings are required to wear masks and social distance. And so our 56-bed shelter is really now just for around 30 people, less than 30. Because if you're going to sleep 6 feet apart, that very much limits, your capacity. And then our Myers Center, which is sort of our one-stop shop for those that are struggling on the streets, they are still asked and required to wear masks inside our building. They are still asked to, social distance. We only let so many people inside. That's in the afternoons where people can come get a shower, they can get a meal, they can do laundry, they can see a social worker, case manager. And so across our programs, it's just listening to the professionals, our health professionals, to say, okay, when can we open up, on a cold weather night and go back to 56 beds in our shelter? Because right now we have to open up our Myers Center, which is a different facility on a cold weather night, like we did during the winter storm in the middle of a pandemic, which was not much fun, so that we can continue to spread people apart. And then listening to, okay, we've got, what percentage of folks that are staying in our shelter, need to be vaccinated before we can loosen those restrictions, and what percentage of our staff, need to be vaccinated. So all of those things kind of come into play, and right now we're just in the middle of it. And I think we see a light at the end of the tunnel, but we're still just trying to figure out, vaccinations, percentages, while still requiring masks and social distancing, to be safe. So we're in the middle of that. There's still a lot of challenges. Operating a grocery store and a cafe, we're still asking people to wear masks. We still provide masks for people who don't have them, come into a grocery store. So we're still operating as though the pandemic is in existence, because it is, even though Texas may not be. We are still trying to provide safe environments.
Sure. So it sounds like maybe a little bit more work right now, but it's working towards something that's hopefully going to be more exciting.
And we're used to it. At this point, we've been doing it for a year, and so it's really it's the new normal that all of us are.
What new things can happen? You can change on a dime.
Sure. Yeah, exactly. So God's been sort of working in and through our staff, our volunteers, certainly our donors, and the people that God has called us to serve. And the pandemic, really hasn't stopped that at all. It's really just changed, just like churches, how the method of delivery of ministry.
So what you sort of started to allude to this, signs of hope this past year. What are some things that you saw happen that were really hopeful and God at work in the midst of this pandemic?
Yeah, I mean, there's in the world of ministry, very rarely, do you have significant life change within a short amount of time. It's just God tends to work through various people to transform lives. And throughout Mission Waco, you can look over the course of history and see a significant amount of life change. there was one individual who came to us, came to our shelter. His name was Clint, and he was a former paramedic, and came to us during a pandemic and suffering from PTSD and some other significant sort of life change that happens in a lot of folks that come through our shelter. About 80% of the people who come to us very much have a diagnosable mental health condition. And so we try to, yes, provide food, clothing, shelter, those sort of things that are essentials that people need, and especially in times of crisis, which we've had now a few since this time last year. And so Clint was one of those that came to us. He needed the essentials, and so we provided those things. But then over the course of case management, we have a licensed professional counselor on staff, and a number of people that got involved in his life. He was able to get his feet up underneath him. He had access to all the resources that he needed to have access to get up off the streets, and now has a full-time job with iPest here in town. And it's business partners like that, too, that I think that are willing to not look beyond the resume, look beyond sort of the life circumstance, and say, you know what, I'm willing to give somebody a chance. It might be risky, it may not work out, but they did it anyways. And that's one of those businesses that we work with that does a great job at that. And so Clint's one of those, just a great example of hitting rock bottom, seeking our services, had the desire to change and the willingness to change, because the people with quote unquote the problem, they have to be a part of the solution to the problem. We can't do for others, and we don't want to do for others what they can do for themselves. And so oftentimes we say that empowerment is that process of creating an environment where people help themselves, because we don't want to do that for them. We can't do that for them. And so Clint's a great example of just that sign of hope. So during the middle of a pandemic, someone with next to nothing comes to us, and then through the process of God changing their life and working in their lives, now suddenly has a full-time job, has a place to stay, and is a contributing member back in Waco. And so those sort of individual stories, success stories, are reminders of during these significant challenging times that God is still at work. God can still change lives and transform someone who has nothing and the now is profoundly different in a different life stage because of the resources that God has provided at Mission Waco.
And God did not stop working
No.
during COVID. God has not stopped working and working in people's lives and through people.
And in fact, I think we see a lot that it really highlighted the vulnerability in our community, the gaps that exist financially for so many in our community. When so many of our folks that are beneath the federal poverty guideline that the government would consider poor, I mean, they're just right on the verge. And so losing one of the 3 jobs they have now puts them in a financially sort of a lot of pressure. And so we had a lot of people seek out our services that normally would have never sought out our services. We went back because of a grant from United Way to help people pay for rent, utility, sort of grocery assistance. A lot of the people that we went to that had come through our services in the last 24 months, we were able to go back and say, hey, do you need help? And a pretty high percentage of those had lost their jobs and were within a month or 2 months or 3 months of getting back on the street. And so through donors like that, we were able to come alongside, specific and uniquely because of the pandemic, really help them stay not homeless. And so that was a significant effort and help as well from the community.
Yeah, the things have been revealed.
Sure.
The precariousness many people live, and we're grateful that folks like Mission Waco exist in our community to help come alongside people like that.
Well, in St. Albans, I mean, you look at the winter storm and your church just opening its doors to say, you know what, if you need a warm place to stay, you need a place to charge your phone, you need a roof over your head, please come stay with us. It is the example of what Christ would do, and so happy for churches like you, like the St. Albans, that were willing to do that, and willing to, I mean, it's a lot of exposure, there's a lot of risk, it's quite challenging to open your doors and have people come stay with you. We've been doing 24/7 care for those on the streets for a year now, and it's quite challenging. And so even doing it for a week, though, goodness, and so it was things like that that just it made me extremely hopeful. You have this gorgeous new building, right? And I pass by it every single day, and to see that it was welcoming for folks who didn't have power and didn't have water, that's hope.
Well, I kept thinking about the story about Clint and the Warming Center and Myers Center, and the Good Samaritan. And someone just on the street needs help, and that Christ is the Good Samaritan and calls us to be that way.
Yeah.
So, how can St. Albans help? What can our folks at home? What are some areas that Mission Waco needs? Volunteers, support, prayer, all the ways that we can help.
Well, God loves you, and I have a wonderful plan for your life. And that is, I mean, we could always use volunteers. We could always use donors. I think one of the unique ways that I've seen people at St. Albans already do, which we would absolutely want more of, is shopping in a grocery store.
Jubilee Market.
Jubilee Food Market, and eating at the World Cup Cafe. I'm setting the bar really low here, because you gotta buy groceries somewhere. You have to eat your biscuits and gravy from some restaurant. Why not World Cup Cafe and Jubilee Food Market? It really does, providing a resource, during the winter storm was a great example. When no one could get their cars out and go anywhere, operating a grocery store, a food desert, allowed people
Nothing around there.
Nothing, nowhere to get any groceries. And so I would say 9 out of 10 customers were walking from the neighborhood to the grocery store. I mean, we had four-wheel drive vehicles and volunteers. And about 10 volunteers with four-wheel drive pickup trucks and SUVs shuttling our staff to the grocery store. In fact, my manager, Robert Lopez, he actually he lives outside of town, but he lived with a friend for that week so that he could get to the grocery store in Waco, because we knew that it was coming, the storm was coming. But shopping at the grocery store allows the grocery store to continue, because the average ticket sale is less than $9 a person. People are buying groceries for that day, right, or a couple days. And we need more people like maybe you and I who can come in and spend $50 to $60 and not bat an eye. We need that kind of resource coming into the grocery store. And I think oftentimes we've heard people say, I don't want to go to the Mission Waco's grocery store because I don't want to take away from people who need that resource in your neighborhood. It's in fact the opposite. We absolutely need you. We need people in Waco to shop at that grocery store so that we can continue to provide fresh fruits and vegetables at our grocery store and good meat. We have what's called an Oasis Rewards program, where people in the neighborhood, for every $25 they spend, they get $5 back. Which, if you're familiar with rewards programs,
that's pretty good.
It's pretty darn good. Most grocery stores.
HEB, I keep waiting, and it's like
I've stopped even
after
paying
a year.
attention, because it's every $1,000 I spend, I get 5 cents back.
Yes.
But this is a really significant resource. So in order to provide that, that's how people in our neighborhood have access to affordable and healthy food. And because we believe that the gospel of Jesus Christ is holistic, we think there's something wrong when people don't have access to good, affordable, and healthy food. And so this is our way to provide a way to shop with dignity. It's why we don't necessarily have a food pantry, so to speak, although we do provide meals for folks like that are staying in our homeless shelter. But just by simply shopping at the grocery store, you are pouring back into the community, those that are under-resourced in our community. And so come shop and come eat at the World Cup Cafe.
Great. Well, John, so I expect all of you get your Sunday lunch on head that way.
Well, you can't,
You can't
we're
be able-
closed on Sundays at the
Right.
World Cup
The
Cafe,
World Cup
but you can
Cafe.
shop
You can shop.
at the grocery store.
That's right. John, thank you so much for being here
Thanks
with
for
us.
having me.
Thank you for all the work that you do in Mission Waco. I mean, we have people who volunteer with My Brother's Keeper. We've had people at World Cup Cafe. I mean, a number of people in our parish
Yeah.
are involved in some way with Mission Waco, and we are so grateful to be able to partner with you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Well, thank you. Appreciate the partnership and for having me on.
Yeah. God's peace and blessings.